everyone, it's Shannon here for a Cherry on Top Crafts. In today's video, we are going to create this fun and fruity project featuring several products from Waffle Flower Crafts. First up are these Fruity Icon dies from Waffle Flower Crafts. I love these designs. They're very bold and graphic. The die will cut out an outline around the fruit, and then inside that outline are the negatives. For right now, we want those negatives in the fruit only. So I'm going to go ahead here and pop out that little leaf, place down the lemon onto my grip mat. There is a little negative piece there in this stem. I want to get that out as well. And we're going to repeat this process for all the fruits that I cut out, popping out those negative pieces, including the little leaves and stems, and placing them here onto my grip mat so I can add color. So now that I have all the negatives popped out, I'm going to start ink blending. Starting here with this pair, I'm going to ink blend with Twisted Citron Distress Oxide, kind of create a little gradation. Then we'll enhance that gradation with a darker green. This is Mowed Lawn. I'm moving on to a shader brush. This is Shader Brush 1, just because it's a little bit smaller and easier to work with and get into those tight spaces. For the leaves, I'm going to just ink blend them with Mowed Lawn, creating a little gradation over them as well. Then I'm going to move on to the rind for the watermelon, ink blend it first with that Twisted Citron, then grab a Shader Brush 2, which is kind of an angular and linear brush, and ink blend the little kind of striations in the watermelon rind with that Mowed Lawn. Now we're going to move on to the lemon. We're going to start by ink blending with Squeeze Lemonade, of course. Ink blend just kind of a base with that. And then to create a little gradation, I'm going to grab some mustard seed and ink blend the top and bottom, I guess, of the lemon with that mustard seed. Also going to ink blend the banana with mustard seed, and then we're going to move on to Wild Honey, a warmer yellow, to kind of really ripen this banana and make it look just ready to, just the perfect stage to eat. Just going to ink blend the top and bottom of that with that Wild Honey. And then for the stem of that watermelon, we're going to use some Vintage Photo, just ink blend that stem top, and then also our other stems for our other fruits, which I've kind of piled together here on the right. Now we're going to move on to the mango. I'm going to first ink blend the whole mango with the gradation in Spiced Marmalade. And then to kind of make it look ripe, we're going to use a little bit of Abandoned Coral at the top, and that just creates kind of the perfect color combo for a mango. Then for the apple, we're going to ink blend it in Candied Apple. And then to kind of make it look a little bit more rounded, we're going to grab a little bit of aged mahogany and ink blend the very bottom of our apple with that really dark red. I went back and ink blended it a little bit more with candy apple just to kind of warm it up a little bit, and then finished with a tiny bit more of aged mahogany. Now for the watermelon, we're going to ink blend it simply with picked raspberry, just kind of create a little gradation. Just wanted to do something different than the traditional red to bring in some more colors. So I went ahead and die cut those Fruity Icon dies, again out of some black cardstock, left the negatives inside, and now we're going to use some Waffle Flower foam strips. This is the 1/8 thickness. The 1/16 thickness, so not quite as thick as the 1/8. You don't need a super ton of dimension here, just a little bit to kind of pop it up, but mostly we're using this foam adhesive to hold those negatives in place inside their frames. So we will have a nice place to adhere our ink blended negatives on top. And by having these cut out of black cardstock, we're going to have a beautiful black border, or that frame will be in that black and have lots of contrast. So I went ahead and added foam adhesive to the backside of all of my fruits. Now I'm ready to glue on those ink blended negatives. So I'm just going to add a little bit of liquid adhesive on to the black die cuts, and then I will pop in, kind of inlay those ink blended negative pieces, including even those little teeny tiny stems. That little extra added detail really just kind of makes them shine. And there is our lemon all done. So I'm just going to repeat this process now for all the fruits. This was my favorite part of this whole process. I loved adhering these colored negatives onto that black die cut because I just love that contrast. It was just very satisfying to put these together, and they just pop. This is such a fun die. This would also work with just a white outline too, but I definitely think the black really kind of heightens that graphic look. Now we're going to add a few details, starting here with a black Copic multi-liner. This is 0.3. I'm just going to actually draw in the seeds. The die actually does die cut seeds onto the cardstock, but I'm just making them a little bit more visible with the marker. Now we're going to move on to adding highlights to the fruit. I have a white gel pen here, and I'm just going to add it a little highlight to the leaves and to the fruits, just kind of here and there. I am kind of trying to avoid where the dye adds a little detail, just because it's harder to color over those cut areas with the gel pen. But this does really make the fruit look shiny and more dimensional, and it's so fun and easy to do that I end up doing it a lot to my die cuts, or even to my stenciled images, or even my Copic colored images. So now we're going to move on to a background. I have an A2 top folding white card base, and I'm going to ink blend a really fun and easy checkered background. I think it just works really well with the fruit. I'm using this Jumbo Checker Stencil from Waffle Flower. I've placed my card base onto my grip mat, and now I'm just centering this stencil over that front of my card. Once I get it in place, I'll then grab some extra pieces of acetate that I'm going to use here as masks. I want to kind of mask off the sides and the top and bottom, so we just end up with this 3x4 grid of checker squares right in the center of our card. So I'm just moving on here, doing the bottom, then I'll finish with this last piece of acetate up at the top. Once I get all those masks in place, ready to ink blend, we're going to ink blend all the openings here in our Jumbo Checker Stencil in Twisted Citron Distress Oxide. Just going to ink blend those 6 squares real quickly with that ink. Once we finish with that, I'll go ahead and remove the acetate masks. You could of course use tape here if you want, but this is the beauty of the grip mat. I can just use these acetate pieces and stick them down to the grip mat to hold them in place, so I don't have to bother with any tape. Now I'm going to do the other checkered openings in my design. So I've just rotated my stencil around, centered it back over my card front, making sure to line up the checkered stencil with my already ink blended checker design. Placed my masks back down on the top, bottom, and left and right sides, and now we're going to ink blend over our stencil with peeled paint Distress Oxide. Just kind of a nice contrast with the Twisted Citron. A little bit unexpected, but I like the kind of these two colors together, and I liked how they worked with the bright, vibrant fruit. Now that I've finished ink blending over the stencil, I'm going to go ahead and remove the stencil and all those masks, and we are done. Now I did not place my stencil perfectly well, or didn't mask, I guess, with my masks as well as I would like. So I had a little bit of ink where I didn't want it, so I used a Tombow Mono sand eraser to kind of clean up a little bit. And now we're going to move on to our sentiment. I have the Fruity stamp set here. I just grabbed the sentiment off of that set, and we're going to stamp it onto some black cardstock. I am going to heat emboss, so I did apply some anti-static powder, then inked up my sentiment in Versamark embossing and watermark ink. Once I've stamped my sentiment, I went ahead and dipped it into some white embossing powder, of course kind of tapped off the excess, and then I will heat set here with my heat tool. Now I want to cut my sentiment out, but there isn't a die for this, so I'm just going to fussy cut it out. First thing I'm going to do is just kind of remove it away from the rest of the black cardstock so I can more easily kind of turn and kind of wiggle this sentiment while I cut it, so I get a nice close fussy cut to the actual sentiment. I am trying to kind of mimic the look of a die cutting it, where it's you have this nice little border of cardstock. If you want to simplify this, you could just cut it down to a strip. There is no reason to cut it so close, but I do like that nice clean look. Now we're going to move on to kind of putting this whole card together. I have some foam adhesive added to the backside of my sentiment as well as all the die cuts. So I'm going to first arrange kind of my die cuts where I want them, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove the backing on the foam adhesive, just kind of working my way down. For the sentiment, I did use black foam adhesive strips. I just think that has a nice clean look, and I'm just working my way down here with all my fruits, kind of placing them underneath in this kind of grid-like manner, not trying to line up the fruit necessarily in the squares, but just kind of keeping them in this nice arrangement so it feels balanced. And after I get that last mango stuck down, we are all done. I'm going to go ahead and lift up to the camera here so you can kind of see how it all turned out and how it looks all together. I really love those Fruity Icon dies. I just think they have such a cool, bold, and graphic look, and I think they just really pop on that beautiful checkered background. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you have any questions about the products I use, please check out the links below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.